to ask one more question about the church building. In the information you gave us, it said that Ellen Dodge's coffin was under the altar. I always was told that it was beside the pulpit under the floorboards. And that there was a brick vault that it was built to put it in, and that was taken away in the 1950s.
You know, somewhere there's real specific information on that, and I swear I saw it too at one point, and I haven't been able to unearth it.
It seems logical that it would be closer to here than back there.
Because they would have had to take apart the altar in order to move it.
Well, she died though before it was built.
Well, that was and that's what I'm vaguely remembering in whatever this is I read, that because it was under construction, he could make a provision for that, and also a provision for her to be removed. But
yeah,
I just,
that's why.
Yeah.
I think that's why I think it was there. But.
Well, he did promise never to leave her side, is what
Right.
we're told, and that would kind of make sense that it would be near the pulpit.
Yeah.
Perhaps the safest bet is to say that she was buried somewhere up in the sanctuary area. Would that work? And with specific instructions, very carefully laid out vault and specific instructions that should be removed. Yeah. Okay. All right. Lydia and Davey, come up.
Most of it's in the book. Little lines in it. I don't have a voice.
Oh dear, what about your
Nobody can
voice?
hear me. My husband can't hear me. He swears his hearing is fine. It's my voice. I don't know.
I can hear you.
Oh, thank you. But Booty and I were in church
You may
once.
have to back up.
Yeah, oh yeah, back up just a little bit, Davey, so we can get you on the camera. There we go.
Camera, look,
Yeah.
In the middle
what
though.
I'm
She
called.
says you didn't tell me that I was going to be video.
Anyway, one Sunday morning, Dr. Martin said, I need somebody to write up the windows. And Booty and I were really young then and didn't know any better. And the most exciting thing was nobody had a key to the church except the priest and the sexton. We got a key to the church so we could come in and study the windows. We didn't have internet. No books were available except on weekends from the library in Brunswick. So we could go down there, check out the books on symbols then, and have them back by 9 o'clock Monday morning when the library opened. And we did. And that's what we did. We learned a lot. We had a good time. And one of the most interesting things about the back window was that nobody knew what it, I mean, if you asked somebody what it meant, I don't know what that means. The Confession of St. Peter, of course. But the funniest thing that happened to me about that window was one day this very handsome young man in biking pants came in, and he looked at it and he stood there and he said, I'm a Catholic priest and I don't understand why an Episcopal church would have a window to St. Peter. And I thought, boy, do you have a lot to learn. I said, you know, we all share St. Peter. It's not just yours. But there are a lot of interesting things you learn from people when they come in. Some that you want to repeat and some you don't. But this is most interesting because people would think that this soldier was going to whack this piece of cloth in two. It says St. Martin of Tours. Well, if you read about St. Martin of Tours, you know that he did cut he was a soldier, a Roman soldier. He didn't want to be a soldier. He also didn't want to be a bishop, so he hid before he became a bishop. But he saw this beggar who was freezing, and so he cut his stole in two and gave half of it to the very cold man. We always said it looked like one of our parishioners.
Oh dear.
No, the faces really are, are very interesting in these old windows because they weren't just stylized pretty, they look like people.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing about that one, but that is St. Martin of Tours.
Can I ask a question? The book with the windows, is it any way for us to get a copy of that?
Well, there's a whole book on the windows.
Okay.
All this stuff that I have in my file,
Right, but is
it's in the
it,
book.
Actually have
It's in the book.
paid,
But can we get a copy of it?
Yeah,
that's what I'm
yeah, I
saying.
can do that, Bonnie.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be so,
Yeah.
I'll, it may be a week. I don't like to
No
take
rush,
it
but
up.
it'd be
Yeah,
great
but I can, oh, you got it all?
These are the pages of the.
Okay,
Yeah, we
that's
have the
perfect, that's
pages.
what they need,
Yeah,
that's what they need.
Yeah.
Because what you're gonna have in here, you've got a little introduction from Davy,
right.
and then Booty, the pages I can run off for you. And then they've also put the cookbook pages in here.
Oh,
So that'll give you both Booty and Davy's write-up and the cookbook pages. But yes, I can run those off for you
That'd be
again
just so
too.
great to really, because it's
We
gonna
get
take a
asked
long time
that
to.
quite a lot.
Yeah.
about windows.
Right. Yes, Bill?
Davey, I've had a person ask me the same way you had the Catholic priest, but why is St. Martin of Tours in our church?
Well, he was a priest who later became a bishop. And the wonderful story about him is that they wanted him to become a bishop. And he did not, he didn't want to be a soldier, he wanted to be a priest. But his family made him be a soldier. That's one of the things I read. And so when he saw this man that was shivering, he took his stove, cut it in half, and gave him part of it. And he had a dream that night that he was going to become a priest. And he did, but he didn't want to be a bishop. And so he hid. And his hiding place was revealed by the quacking of a goose, one story is. That's kind of interesting. Another thing is, we had a priest one time who preached on Epiphany. And he said, with all of these windows in Christ Church, you don't have anything about the Epiphany. Well, I didn't get up here in church and say, you're wrong. I invited him to come back and find the Epiphany stars, which you can find in the corners of our windows all around the church. But we do have the Epiphany stars. Is there anything else that was...
Why don't you tell them about the windows that went in the 60s?
Oh, yeah. The last windows that were put in here were put in 1969, but they're in the back. They're the historical windows.
Yeah, you don't count.
The Old Thorpe window, of course, is historical, and the Fort Frederica windows, and the feeding of the 5,000 in the back was also put in 1969. And some of the older windows were reworked, particularly one in the, as you come in the church, the one that has the old church and new church, that was done. All that work was done by the Willett and Company. But the one in the back that's the historical window that has the little flag was kind of fun one day. The church was not open, but I was coming in to do altar duty. And these two ladies and a man came up and they said, may we go into church? And I said, well, it's not open. It won't be open till 2. They said, well, we're flying away before then. But I did some work on one of the windows, and I would like to see it completed. She worked for Willett, and so we came in, and the gentleman in the back looked at it, and he said, well, you got the flag wrong. The Britons weren't using that particular flag at that particular time. So,
Oh, no.
but that's funny.
Where was
Yeah.
the stained glass window in the back? Where was it?
I don't know.
Before they
You remember, Booty?
I think it was in Lovely Lane for a long time.
Yeah, that
Really? Maybe it was still the back of the church. They just moved it back.
Well, there were no,
Wasn't a window at the back.
could be, I wasn't here then. I didn't get here in 1963.
Which is the window with the 6 fingers?
Or is that a myth?
Oh, I've forgotten which one that was.
It's back here, but I'm not sure which one it is.
I have never been able
I've
to
never
find
been
it.
able to
and
find
I've
it.
looked.
But it is that, it is, I have.
I think it's that low line with you always, just this side of the door.
It's,
And I have a hard time finding it
yeah,
too.
if you study it, you can.
Yeah. Booty and Davy, do you know that window we're talking about, the low I am with you always, did that come from the Willett studio too?
No, that did not.
It didn't?
No,
Okay.
that was from, it's signed, but it's not from the Willett studio, and I don't, it's not my favorite window, so I
Oh, no. I just said
Yeah,
that.
it is kind of,
It's too elongated, and the colors are just not very pretty.
yeah.
Oh,
So we really,
Jesus doesn't look that good in that kind, don't want that.
Where is the Willett studio located?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, yeah. I'm quizzing her because I'm gonna put a little cheat sheet in the front of the window for you. Now, a long time ago, when I went through my first training, I was told that these two windows were English. Does that sound right? Okay. And
Anson ordered them, I think.
so they went in 1884.
One is to his wife, and one is to,
Yeah.
That one's to his wife,
okay, yeah, that was to his wife.
and this is to the King family, some people
Yeah,
in the
one of the
King
Kings.
family.
Right. Okay.
And these two are the brothers that went to war.
Yes.
But we
which ones were-
understood that these three, these two, and the two in the transept all came from the same studio in England, right?
Yeah, that's what I
Yes.
can tell. Is that Eileen? All right. We're gonna go with that.
So they were all original, I mean, when the
Yeah,
church
original to the
opened,
church
So
window.
you
So
can
say
tell
that-
by
say
the
that again.
design, the style. This style is so
The
different
resurrection
from
window, the
American
nativity
style.
window, the
The
first
ones with the medallions.
three windows going down here, Martin of Tours and George and John and whatever that next one is. And then these two over here. They're all English,
Not this, okay.
not that one. That's a mystery. We don't know
No,
about
I
that.
have it in my book as to who did it,
Yeah.
and they asked when we were gonna have another window made, they applied to do one. And fortunately, or somebody, I found in the correspondence that, General King had written them about doing some of these windows, and they wrote back, if you want to pay us, we'll do a picture. And so they wouldn't do a drawing until they got a picture. Got money down front, and I think Willett was a little bit more accommodating at the time, so they, thank goodness.
So I just want some clarification.
Yeah.
England, they are of English descent, is what we're
Right.
saying. Okay.
Done in
We
England.
knew the makers back then, but I can't recall.
Yeah, it's not.
What about those with the baptismal font?
Now,
That's,
those came much later.
yeah,
much
that's
later,
after
right?
World War II, because they're,
Those are 69 too, I
I
think.
want to interject a question here, just as kind of alarming, but has this church been thoroughly documented? Is supposing it burned down, and we wanted to reproduce it,
good.
has it ever,
That's really what we're trying to get our arms around, Art. And thank goodness we have people like this that have been here a long time, that a lot of it is oral history, and there's nothing wrong with that. Especially if the, the same facts are told by a lot of people. But that's really what we depend on. There may be some things back in old church files that we haven't
well,
unearthed.
do we have a
but that's what-
plan of the church, an architect's plan of the church?
I don't know, we must have.
Because
I say
the
that.
windows, the pictures of the windows are all in the cookbooks, but
Well, that
It
was,
took
if
forever
we
to
wanted
get
to,
that
if
done.
we wanted to duplicate this church, God forbid that such a thing would happen, what would we have to go on?
yeah, well, that's a very good question. Ask Glenn Queener, our new parish administrator, because all of us would love, some set in stone factual document, but we don't have it. We have a lot of, what I got my information from was a lot of different items that were stuffed in the docent manual. Some news items, some church histories that had been written by people of the church, and where things duplicated themselves, I said to myself, all right, that must be true. But I've always thought that this would be a great project for I don't know, an art history
A
major or
student,
a student,
yeah.
a graduate student, you know. But to answer your question up here, I think Davey's right. That window is honoring 2 World War II veterans.
Mhm.
So obviously, it must have come later,
And
maybe.
Davy, what about the windows behind the altar?
Those were original to the church. I mean, when this church was built.
In 1884?
Yes,
And they're American?
yes.
Okay.
Because they said that this same stained glass, these people I talked to from England said that putting the, quote, diamonds and rubies and so forth was uniquely American.
Okay.
That was not a thing that they did in England. So that, and of course, the whole background of those windows is the
Passion flower. yeah.
which has wonderful, and that's in the manual too, everything about every part of the passion flower. And they, of course, are the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit now, and the Lamb of God.
Oh, what about I didn't know that.
Way up.
Oh, those were reworked from a previous window in 1969 and put in the clerestory.
Now, Fred, did we thoroughly confuse you, but you?
No,
you
I
got it
just
now?
wanted some clarification.
Yeah, right, and then,
because,
and of course, the big piece in the back. Now, my understanding of the St. Peter window is that Anson's mother had that done at the Mayer Studio in Munich, Germany,
Yeah.
and brought over on the occasion of his death.
Yes.
And I
It was
thought,
brought to in 1899 to the docks at Epworth. That's where it
Okay.
was delivered from Germany.
and I thought it had been put in the back of the church at that time, and then when the church was expanded, they just took it out and moved it back.
That's what I
That's
thought.
reasonable.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I have heard the story that it was put on a donkey cart and it took them all day to get here.
A donkey cart.
And when they,
Imagine.
when they opened the four packages, there were 4 pieces.
Yeah.
They were all wrapped in straw and burlap.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's
But the
fascinating.
people had a letter from Mr. Mayer when we had a lovely German lady who was a member of the parish, and she wrote to the Mayer and Company and asked them if they had any information about it. And I think there's a copy of the letter in your file. I know there is, but I have a copy of the letter too. But anyway, they said that it was made by their studio and that they had the full-scale drawings until the Munich fires during World War II, and they were destroyed then. And then they said, do you need anybody to make some more windows for you?
And they are still in business.
They are still in business.
Is the story true about the bar that was across Jesus'
Yes,
face?
it
And
was.
someone walked in and said, I helped ship this, or I know about shipping these things, and that was strictly a packing, and it eventually was taken away?
I remember that, Bob
that-
across it, don't you, Billy?
Yeah, Father Rennick mentioned that. I remember
Uh-huh.
that.
The picture in the cookbook has the bar straight
Right.
across. I always keep it marked.
Okay.
there
Weren't
To
these,
show people what it looked like at the bar was.
Uh-huh.
weren't the windows taken out in '95 and cleaned? Is that
They were
it?
clean.
And I think that Father Renniger
was it,
said, can you do something about it?
Yeah,
And when they put them back in, they did it around the nimbus instead of across his face. So we
So it
have,
was deliberately done across the face
To keep
Right.
it.
for support, yeah,
Yeah,
right,
for
for,
support.
yes,
But we could
yes,
have taken it out at any time.
Oh, okay, that's what I understood.
yeah.
Okay.
and when the
All right.
sunlight
Just kinda
hits
funny.
that towards the end of the day,
Oh,
it
it's
is the
gorgeous.
most dramatic thing you've ever seen. It's just wonderful.
Now, is it true that we have a Tiffany window?
Yes.
Yes,
Because
it's
that's what I
attributed
saw.
to Tiffany, but Tiffany did not sign it.
Right, that it was not signed.
It's the one that
But it's been
the,
authenticated.
Her children.
yeah, the children raised it, blessed it, and that was,
Tiffany only signed the ones he installed.
yes.
So he installed the one in Faith Chapel, which makes sense because they had, those millionaires had, very deep pockets and they could invite anybody they wanted to. And there are only 4, as far as I know, Betty, I don't know, you might know this. but
I don't
there-
know.
As far as I know from my Jekyll history, that I have to do a lot of tours over there too. And there are only 4 signed Tiffany windows in the United States. And 3 of them are in New York, and 1 is on Jekyll Island.
Now,
This is so obviously a Tiffany, if you look at it, it's, it
Yeah.
is, but, I think
There it
the,
is. The rest.
Gould family saved their money so they could, that was Anna Deborah Gould.
oh,
Maybe
really?
is it true that St. George has been decommissioned?
Yes, I'm afraid it is. And I like St. George, I don't want.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean he's been decommissioned?
Just St. George?
St.
Like
George.
it's Catholic
He's not a
Church,
saint
but
anymore?
the English still believe that St. George is the patron saint of England.
Oh,
Gosh.
Yes,
That's good.
Go ahead,
About
Bob.
the Cooper Wiley. Cooper Wiley window.
yeah, that's,
But
those are
he's
two
still
early families, and they all.
Well, somebody said it was in a, somebody's basement or something.
Betty can tell you,
Yeah.
we're talking about the window just beyond the Tiffany that's just loaded with
Jewels.
symbols.
The
Yeah,
jewels.
jewels, yeah.
I was here one afternoon, and a young man came in and he said, I want to see the window that my mother gave in 1962. And I said, we don't have any windows that are 1962. And he said, well, she bought it, she was an interior decorator, and she bought it at an auction in Alabama, and she was going to put it in somebody's house and they didn't like it. So when we were moving to North Georgia, she gave it to Christ, it was in our basement, and she gave it to Christ Church. And I said, gee, I think I know which window it is. And so I took him to it, and he said, yeah, that's it. I remember it when I was a little boy. So, but nobody knew where, nobody knows where it was made. But the man from the, was he from the Smithsonian, said it was early American.
Yeah, that would fit with what they said about
Yeah.
the diamonds and the rubies.
Jewels, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
assume the Cooper Wiley name was added later.
It was his mother that did that. She was a Hamilton, and
Okay.
that was a
And
connection.
the Hamiltons and Coopers were real close.
Well, somebody said one day, you know how you hear things,
Yeah.
it's like, somebody's in here and said that they understood that part of that window, or that window itself, came from, where was it?
Strawberry Mansion in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Right.
And that the stones, I mean, I'm just repeating what
Yeah.
they said. So when I went home, I Googled. And apparently, you know, it had fallen in disrepair and windows had been taken and parts of windows. And you even at one point on eBay could buy the ruby
Oh, they
glass.
did, yeah.
So I wondered if,
Well, she bought it at an auction, and it was just at an auction in Alabama. And I brought it back to St. Simon's, so that's how it got here.
Betty wrote us a little note about it, and I retyped it and put it in front of the window in the window book. And what they're referring to, Janice Walker, who was a longtime docent here and actually headed the ministry for a while, was in here the day that the man from the National Historic Trust came in. And he said that was our most important window because of that red and pink glass. He said it was very hard to achieve, and that it was so full of symbolism, and he could really take it apart. But Davy and Booty have given you a beautiful write-up on it too. So.
I think that if you read the write-ups in the books, it tells you exactly
Yeah.
what it's all about.
Dr. Martin was really, at the time, I think, more interested in the symbolism than he was in how the window got there. You know, that wasn't our emphasis, which should have been, but now we realize.
He was an historian.
I mean, they're both, well, you needed both.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. And, you know, we always think, oh, we'll never forget that. But you need to write it down, like Art says. Any other questions for Davy or Rudy? Yes, Bill?
Well, I have a couple that I'm asked about the flooring. I know it's not windows, but is the flooring original?
Heart pine.
Heart pine original floors, yes.
Okay. And the other thing, has any damage been done to the building, the structure over the 130 years, or? You know?
Nothing really significant that I'm aware of. I think obviously a new roof has probably been put on at some time. These lanterns obviously aren't original.
Yeah, I had a roofer told me that is the most expensive roof, you know, he like rattled off things that he's ever seen. You know,
Yeah.
he was the owner of a roofing company in Miami.
The cross up on top is almost brand new.
Yeah, we used to have a cross that was made by a Portuguese gentleman, is that correct?
Portuguese that were building a house in Carlsbad on Sea Island, and they made the first
Tim Rosia that installed one recently up on top and told me what a job it was to get up there and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, Bob Theobald made both of the crosses. There's one on each, out front and then the one out here. He made both those as well as the one at St. Ignatius.
I didn't know that.
I did not know
He's
that.
quite
Yeah.
a skilled workman with wood.
Wasn't the cross replacement due to a stone that took?
Well, I think it was deteriorating for some reason.
Right, no,
Isn't that right, Ed?
they were eaten up by, they were just falling apart.
Yeah, and it just
And
happened.
when was the time when the bees were in the belfry? that
Okay,
they-
that gets into
Long
history.
time.
That's the old church.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
that's
tell you
it.
about
Yeah.
that.
That's
That's it.
written up, I
Honey,
wrote that in
Okay.
the
I
ECW.
must
All right,
tell
David,
y'all that
good job.
Joyce
Your voice held
remembers
out.
a cross that lit up, that was neon or something.
Oh,
I
On this-
questioned this, but he swears, he said, I wish we could get that cross back. It
Who
was
said that?
awful, but Royce, he remembers the neon. So, you know, I don't
It
know.
would be a little jarring.
We'll have to ask Zoanne.
A lot of people want to know about
How
what
was it
kind of
lit?
lighting they had in the early.
Well, I have wondered that too, because we all know how pitch dark it is in here.
Yeah.
We turn the lights off. But do you know, Davy, how did they
Yes.
light this before electricity?
Kerosene lamps, they had
Oh,
a,
that's
you've
good.
seen them in old churches,
With a big round,
big circle.
there's a picture of it over in the parish hall.
Is there?
Yes.
Of that light.
Where, what, they had them just along the way in the...
Well, there was a big wheel that came down from the center of the,
You've
of
seen them
the,
sometimes in Europe in the old churches.
Yeah.
There's a word for it, but it's too long for me to say it. And they were kerosene lamps.
And it probably was...
Kerosene
it came
chandelier.
down from the center of the building and it was huge.
Oh,
There's a
okay.
picture of it over in one of the books over in the
Yeah.
parish hall.
And it probably was maybe the 1930s when we electrified, that's when the lighthouse electrified.
I don't know. The wind building was put in 55 and that's when they put heat and air conditioning.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna update this building sheet for you all. This is all great information.
Yeah, because we don't have anything about the wind building too. That's a good point.
Yeah, okay. All right, good.
Susan?
Yes.
Ask you something. Is there, outside of just what these plaques say and who the windows have been memorialized to, from what families have been made memorials for, is there, the Calders here, is that,
That's
I've
not
had a
the-
lot of questions
No,
that's not
about
the
this plaque.
That's not Alexander Calder, the artist.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that clarification.
Yeah.
He was the CEO of a paper company in Savannah.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, I wondered.
Yeah.
All right, good, that's it.
Well, now, aren't
That's another
plaques up-
project, a plaque project.
Yes,
The plaques
we
are
need a
not
bunch of
telling
grad
you about-
students. I'm sorry.
I said the plaques that are not telling you anything about, why are the plaques there? Is maybe my better question.
They're
Some
memorial.
of them seem to be attached to a window, but others don't.
Well, some of them are newer, and they were because the church was giving them some of money and did not know what to do with it. one
Okay,
time,
so,
they
right,
did
those,
that.
no, that's what I figured.
With
I figured.
that.
Some,
That was
just
it.
a, yeah, just a
That
treatment.
stopped with Junius when he
So-
he retired.
If they're tucked right up next to the window, do we assume it's,
Yeah.
the window is in memory of? But if they're just scattered, they're...
That's correct, but when you see the shiny, modern ones, that's not necessarily what the windows are about.
It was a mirror. Right, if they're right next to.
Okay, Betty, why don't you come up and talk about housekeeping? Because if we get into lunchtime, I can talk about the history over there.
What do you want me to say about housekeeping?
Well, show them through the book, you know, what they need to do.
I'm wondering if the pages for registration shouldn't be the first pages.
Pages.
For registration. These, where you sign your name and the calendar, and you put all your information. Shouldn't that be in the very front so people don't have to keep looking for it?
The index tells them exactly what's in there, that's why.
All right, okay.
It's tabbed, so I think it's okay.
All right, well, it's really important. Tom was asking about how many people had visited, and that's why it's very important to keep your numbers of people on your little clicker. Back when I was taking care of this, we had, and Malcolm said he didn't want to bother with it, so we haven't done it since Malcolm took over. But I would keep it month by month, and then I would add it all up at the end of the year. And some years we had 25,000 people. Some years we had 18, but it was always around that number. One year we had 32,000 that visited, which is really fun. And it was fun to be able, we kept the sheets in the book from year to year, and it was fun to be able to go back and compare the months and the number of tours that we've had and that kind of thing. So that's really important to keep your number of visitors.
You'll appreciate this because one of the fun things is to hear, just as someone mentioned earlier, some of the stories, but in the morning, I've had a tour guide say that we have 1 million visitors a year. So that's really close. I guess if you round up.
Well, now it would be nice if the morning tour people kept, that's new since Malcolm took over. That morning thing is new.
Well, I think that's Jane Watson's.
I'll ask Jane.
Yeah, but I think it would be
great.
fun to have that as another category that we kept track of.
And Glenn Queener is real interested in it, you know.
Yeah,
He
well, I
wants
always
that
gave
info.
it to Shirley for the books, so.
See, we'll start documenting art.
Yeah, be sure you do that. And the number of cookbooks, I always kept that, and the number of tours that come, that visit. So all those numbers are really important. The other thing that's important is to be sure that the postcard rack is full. There's a cabinet in the choir room that has the postcards and the sermons in it. Do not put the sermons in the box. They cost a lot of money to buy, and people take them. We can afford to lose a few postcards, but we can't afford to lose the $2 sermons. So keep those right there with your cookbooks on them. I always put the cookbooks out here and the sermons beside them, so that when people want to buy them, they're right there. Also, please, folks, if you sell a box of cookbooks, replace that box from the cabinet and put it in the little cabinet in the mini sacristy, because sometimes when I come on a Saturday, there are no boxes of books in there. And I'm 82 years old, and I'm not big on hauling those boxes of books into that cabinet. I don't mind putting one box in, but when I have to put 3 in, there should always be 3 boxes of books in the bottom of that cabinet.
Okay, good. I talked with Glenn this morning.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to ask you about was the lights. I have been told not to use the big lights because they're very expensive.
Right, I'm sorry I didn't, and I need to update that page. We just turn on the old lights in here in the afternoons, not the big spots that we have on today, because they really suck up the electricity. And we thought we'd let you see
just the
today.
lanterns?
Yeah, just the lanterns and the lights behind the windows. Now, the lanterns you can turn on out here in the vestibule. There are little toggle switches, and they're all marked. You don't want to turn on the pathway light. But, and there's 2 more modern-looking buttons. You don't need to punch those, but there's one for the altar area and the nave and the vestibule. It's pretty clear. You can see when you go out the door. And then to turn on these lights behind these windows, you go through the mini sacristy and into the priest's room, and there's a toggle switch right by the closet where we store the cookbooks, and that turns on these windows. And you'll enter from the back door and come in and get yourself together, get your lights on and your cookbooks out and everything ready to go, and then unlock the door and you're ready for business. The new and returning people, how many of you do not have a key to the church? Eileen and Carol and Gail. Okay. I talked with Glenn this morning about that. There is a new requirement, it's not our requirement, it's a diocesan requirement, that anybody that has a key to the church has to go through a Safe Children training session. So what you'll need to do is get together with Glenn and figure out how to do that, and he'll give you a key. In the meantime, you just go to the parish house and somebody will come over and let you in. I'm sorry, that's a horrendous inconvenience, but it just is what it is. You know?
I want to ask about the front door. You say in the book to open one side. I always open both sides because I figured that people know that you're open if you open both sides. And I think it's very welcoming to have both doors open.
I thought maybe they just have the one door open. Sometimes the people will go out and they'll just push it shut behind them.
And then it's locked.
I happen to go back there and find it's closed, and people think that the church is closed.
All right. I've had people lock the door on their way
Well,
out.
that's true.
You know,
You don't know it until somebody knocks on the door and you're like, oh my goodness.
somebody told a funny story about a docent one day. She was in here and somebody came over from the office about 3:30 and she said, I haven't had a soul all day long. And they went and she had locked the door or not unlocked it, one or the other. So you do need to check. I thought maybe that second part of the door was hard to open and shut.
No, it isn't.
Okay.
It just
Open them up then. That's great. Just be sure the swinging doors are kept shut so
Yes.
the air conditioning and heat doesn't escape.
and all the tour guides prop it open and they leave it open so that you're air conditioning Glenn County or heating Glenn County. So
Well,
when
then
you've
you
had
get
a
to
tour,
take a little walk back there
when
and
you've
shut
had a
it.
tour, yeah. Check and make sure they left a lot in the alms box.
All right, last but not least, let's talk a little bit about the history. What I did in the manual, I discovered a listing that had been on our website at one time of all of the priests and priests in charge and sometimes rectors and rectors that had served here in historical order. And it was divided up into the mission, the parish incorporated, the parish reorganized. And